Hey YouTube, what's going on? I'm back at it with another video. Today we're going over part 2 of my life story. After recording part 1, I realized part 1 was way too long. Like really 20 minutes and I didn't even really get to what was happening. So let me go ahead and try to do part 2 in a more condensed, concise version. So at this point in my life, I agreed to start getting treatment. I would go into rehabs, and I was sort of in and out of rehabs kind of regularly during this time. I would go in, but for the wrong reasons. I would go in to get my family off my back. I would go in to, help my friends feel at ease, that I was going to be okay. I would go in to satisfy the courts. I never went in with the intention of actually staying sober. The easiest way to explain it is basically I went into treatment, but I went in with the wrong intentions, and I didn't go in with an open mind. I didn't go in with an open mind, so I was never able to actually receive the help that was being provided in there. I saw a drug addict as this like cliche thing that I would never fall into that trap. I thought I was too good. I thought I was too smart. I thought basically like that I was just better than anybody that was a drug addict, and I didn't identify with being called a drug addict or owning up and saying, yeah, I'm like how I'll say, and like how now I can be like, I'm Jackie, I'm a recovering drug addict, and I don't feel a stigma really with that now because it's something that I've overcome, or that it's something that I fight against every day, and I see it as a victory every time I don't use. So so I would go into these rehabs, and I just saw it as a big networking opportunity. How many people can I meet in there, and what do you do? What do you like to do? And then when we get out, we can connect. And basically I was building connections for when I got out. So it's probably no surprise. As soon as I got out, I started picking back up. I was using again. I was back in the same situation where my parents were like, okay, well, you're basically, I was given an ultimatum, was I could move. Everybody was done with me. They were sick of me. I was sick of me. And I just sort of thought, well, if I move, I can start fresh. Nobody knows me out there. I don't have this dark cloud following me around. I can start over and things will be better out there. And that's where one of those cliche sayings from AA or NA actually rings true. And it's like, a lot of those cliche sayings I couldn't really wrap my mind around. Like, they didn't make sense to me. Like, one that still doesn't make sense to me is fake it till you make it. That still doesn't make any sense to me, but this one was, wherever you run, wherever you go to, guess who you take with you? Yourself. So I basically thought I was gonna run away from all of my problems, but I was taking me with me, which I failed to realize, and I was my biggest problem. I was in a halfway house, which is like, I guess like a recovery house. It's also where people go that just get out of prison. The court sends them to a halfway house to straighten up their shit, or they go back in. So the halfway house was like different than anything I had ever encountered before. I just remember thinking it was the biggest ripoff. It's typically run by recovering addicts themselves, which in many of the houses that I ended up in, what happens is the owners of the house end up relapsing, and there's total chaos, and people, they try to like basically just tell you what to do all the time. They have very weird rules. Like one rule, and one of them was you only get one roll of toilet paper for an entire week, which is just like bizarre. I'm like, if I'm paying $500 a month to stay here. The least you can do is give me some toilet paper. I remember if you didn't wake up at a certain time, it was like 4 a.m. wake up at 4 a.m. and if you miss that wake up, then you don't eat again until 4 p.m. because you get put out every day. You're supposed to be out looking for a job. And for me, I didn't really want a job, so I was just out looking for people to get high with and then go back in, rinse and repeat. When you get home, you do a bunch of chores. So needless to say, I had a lot of entitlement issues. I felt like I could just stay wherever I wanted and I didn't need to follow the rules. I didn't need to go get a job. I was just gonna live here and I'll leave every day and then I'll come back. Sure, that's fine. I didn't know how to do a lot of chores. I was just a mess. So during my stay at one of these halfway houses, I jumped around from house to house. I would get kicked out. Obviously, I wasn't following the rules. I would go to another one and kind of jump around like that. So at one of the halfway houses, you didn't actually have to find a job. They just had like an internal job for you to do. So we would go to the stadium and work at the whatever sporting event it was. We would just work the concessions and whatnot. And that's when I ended up meeting this guy. So I met this guy. We started to kick it off. We started to hit things off, and I had on my rose-colored glasses, or in sobriety they call it riding a pink cloud. You go through times, like in early recovery, you go through times of, I think, like really severe depression and just highs and lows. And so I was on one of the highs, and they call that a pink cloud. Here I am, I've met somebody, I'm already on a pink cloud, and now I'm just like flying high. I'm sober at this time. And I think I might have possibly found a soulmate, somebody that's going through a similar struggle, also in recovery, in a halfway house. Boom, we're going to do this together. So not before too long, we started using together, and I had my drugs that I preferred: cocaine, ecstasy, basically painkillers, alcohol, weed. I mean, really, I basically did all drugs, except I wasn't into smoking crack. Not that I didn't try it. I tried it and I didn't like it. He was big into smoking meth and shooting meth, which I had tried meth before, but this wasn't my thing. I didn't really like the way everybody just talked nonstop when they were on it. People would just do weird shit like disassemble electronics or just random stuff that I just thought was kind of weird. And but I really like this guy, so I of course was like, you know what, I'll give it a try. Maybe I'll like it this time. I didn't really like it, but that's that addict mentality. Is I did it with a lot of drugs. Meth wasn't the first one I've done it with. Basically, if I didn't like something, I would try it again and I would see how I could make it work, Well, maybe smoking it's not right. Let me shoot the shit and see how that goes, type of thing. And anyway, I did start shooting the shit, and it was that's what I liked. And I don't want to trigger anybody, so I'm not going to talk about I'm not going to romanticize or glamorize the way it made me feel or anything like that. We all know what doing stuff like that obviously it's a feeling that you chase, so we all know about that. I don't need to go into it. So basically we started doing that together, and so that's when this compulsion started to kind of like I would describe it as just like a very desperate time in my life, a very compulsive time. I developed a lot of strong rituals. I developed a lot of routines that were unhealthy. I was cutting myself regularly. I wasn't eating. I wasn't taking care of myself. When I would eat, I would like gorge and then just throw it all up because had a fear of gaining weight. I've always been obsessed with being thin, even though I've never really been a thin person. That's just been something I've been obsessed with most of my life, and it's actually one of the first things I liked about cocaine was it took away my appetite, or it suppressed it so much to where I really wasn't eating much, and I started to lose weight when I was on it. Now, comes with a lot of bad side effects that I would say are not worth the cost of doing it, but at that time you couldn't talk reason into me. I felt how I felt, and that's how it was. So I guess you could describe us as sort of like a dynamic duo, whatever you want to call it. We were down for each other. We were down to do whatever it took to survive, to get our shit, and to, every day just to maintain that high. We basically, we brought out the worst in each other is just the best way to say it. We brought out the absolute worst in each other, and things just accelerated at a really very rapidly. So this phase lasted for quite a while. I was pretty alienated from my family, from my immediate family, because I was in a state, I knew they wanted me to go out and get clean, and here I went with this dude, and I know nobody else. And I just knew I knew I was doing wrong in my family's eyes, and so it was easier just to stay away from them than to call them and hurt them even worse than I already had. When you're out doing stuff that you know in your heart is wrong, I found it was easier just to stay away from people that might have my best interest at heart, because I didn't want to change and I wasn't wanting to hear what they had to say. We were on the run for a while, and I just remember we both fell asleep at a truck stop and they picked us up. The car was stolen that we were in. I remember when we were getting arrested, the police put us both in the back seat together. We were both handcuffed, but we were in the back seat of the same police car. And I just remember kissing him and knowing like we might never see each other again. And I just remember kissing him in the back of that police car and just feeling so lost. Like, even though I knew we were probably at some point, I think I knew on some level it wasn't going to go on forever. It just was kind of a shock that it finally was to an end, and we got picked up and he insisted on taking the charge, and the police were happy to put it on his record because he already had a strike, so that put 2 strikes for him. When you get 3 strikes, you go away for a long time. I don't remember how long, but I know that was a thing out there. Definitely don't want to get 3 strikes. And I remember trying to take the charge, and they basically were just like, no, he's getting it, he wants it. And they just wanted to put it on his record because he already had 1 strike, and that's basically how it went down. I got released a few days later. I don't know, maybe it was longer than a few days, but when you're in jail, it might have been like a few weeks, whatever. It was nothing. I got out, I knew nobody. He gave me his phone, and it had no charge. It had like 2% or something insane, like maybe 5%. It was basically enough to call one person. Only person I knew was a dealer. And so I just looked up the number in his phone, called that person, let him know, hey, I just got out. He's still locked up. Will you come give me a ride? Because the jail was like an hour from anywhere. Like, it was just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And this person was like, yeah, I'll come get you, but you're gonna have to get a ride halfway. I'm not coming all the way out there. And I was like, oh fuck, you're actually gonna come halfway? Okay, well, I'll meet you halfway. So I just hitched a ride with somebody halfway, and then boom, I'm with this person. So this was a time when I bounced around from, I went from his friend's house, and then I got a ride over to his mom's house. And I remember I couldn't stay at any place that long, especially somebody that was close to him, because I just felt it made missing him worse. It made it more intense. And so I remember going out with his brother one night, and he took me over to some family friend, and we got high. Basically, I really meshed with this person. I'd never met him before, and it wasn't on a romantic level. It was just that we had a lot in common. We just sat and we really clicked. And he offered for me to stay there. I didn't think anything of it. I stayed, and the rest is history. It was never really a fun thing, because I always missed dude, but I mean, it had fun moments. There was fun moments sprinkled in there, but it was always sort of like never gonna be like a permanent thing. I was just sort of passing through or whatever, but then it became a permanent thing. Like I never, I hardly ever left that house. I started to trip out. I just started to fucking just trip on everything. I went from smoking to shooting up, and I couldn't even hit myself. So he had somebody on call that would come and dose me up every few hours. She basically was being paid in shit to just keep me from withdrawing, keep me happy, keep me high. And while that would seem like an ideal situation for a drug addict, it's actually the worst thing you can imagine, because here I am with an unlimited supply, and just on one every day, and it just shit got out of hand. Shit got really fucked up. Shit got out of hand really fast. And one day I was just walking back to the house, and I saw him kick in the door, and I just kept walking. I acted like, I didn't know anything. I just walked just like I was a pedestrian on the street. I just remember my heart was beating so fast. I got to the closest park, and I just dumped all the shit I had on me, and then I just kept walking. I mean, at this point, it was like my breaking point. It was like that was my safe spot. Like that was where I went every day after I left, do whatever shit I had to do, come back. That was like my spot. That was my safe spot. And once that was taken, I had nothing. I walked to the nearest highway. I just remember holding my arm out, and I just remember praying, God, please, if I'm meant to get high, send me the ultimate dose. If I'm meant to get clean, send me the one person in this town that doesn't fucking smoke or do shit to give me a ride. Send me a good Samaritan if I'm meant to get clean. And a good Samaritan pulled over and gave me a ride to his house. He said he didn't do anything. I told him what I was trying to do. I was trying to get clean. I was trying to get in touch with my family. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any money. I needed to get to a treatment center or a hospital. He called my family, and he got me. I spent the night at his house that night. I crashed, and in the morning I went to a hospital, and that's when I got my first round of treatment out. That was the very beginning of my recovery, and it took me quite a while to stick with it and to find things that worked. I remember I got clean, but I relapsed so many times. I just started to question if this was even possible, if I was even going to be able to get out of this mess that I was in. But I kept trying. I kept relapsing, and then I would beat myself up for it, but then I would try again, and I would keep trying. And I finally, a turning point was when I got pregnant with my son. I just was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be one of those parents that gets high and, fucks their kids up and does all this shit that I'd seen. So I'd seen like the dark side of parenting from my addiction, because in a lot of the instances, I was using with the parents that were, you know, hiding in the bathroom, were getting high, and they're ignoring their kids. And I always felt this weird, like, sense of guilt. Even they weren't my kids, and I just felt like shit, like, you know, like, why are we doing this, you know? But like, we wouldn't stop, and I just felt like, well, it's not my place, it's their kids. But when I got pregnant, I didn't want to be that type of a parent. I wanted to get my shit together so bad. And another turning point was I relapsed when I was pregnant. I ended up breaking my arm, and I relapsed on alcohol one night, and then I broke my arm, and they prescribed me painkillers, and then I took the painkillers, and then that like triggered me, and then I drank, and I'm sure I would have shot dope if I had some, but I didn't, and I overdosed that night, and I woke up in the hospital. And I remember my now husband telling me, you know, I need you, your son needs you, you need to do this, and if you don't do this and you have him, you're not going to see him, he's not going to be in your life, he's going to be with me. And I just remember that hit me so hard. It just became glaringly obvious that I only had one choice. I already knew before it was prison, death, or the psych ward. And here I am waking up in the psych ward, and he's telling me this, and it's like, you know what, I can do this. I've gotten through the worst of it. I can do this. I'm going to do this. And that was a major turning point for me. And that's when I really started my recovery. First year I had Nico, I relapsed on alcohol several times during that first year. I was also struggling with postpartum depression. I'm not making an excuse. I just didn't really know that I had that at the time. And the weird thing about being depressed is you do shit that makes you even more depressed. Like, alcohol is a depressant. I'm already depressed. Why did that seem like a good idea? But that's just, you know, the craziness of it. And once I was finally able to move past the drinking, that's when things really started to turn up for me. I still see Nico as the greatest